Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 41st edition of the Bliss Catchers. It's always wonderful to start on time, so thank you for all of you for being here to help us get started. I'm going to take a couple of minutes introducing the show to you. First of all, this is our 41st edition. It's our 4th year we're doing Bliss Catchers, and all of this would not be possible without the support that we get from Odyssey, from Ashwin and his team here. Without them, we cannot be hosting this show every month on the last Saturday. And for so many years and so many editions, they've backed us. So I'd like to celebrate their contribution here. Please join me in thanking them for all that they do. The Bliss Catchers was founded by Vani and me, my wife Vani and me, in 2015 January, as a way of celebrating the philosophy of Joseph Campbell, the American mythologist and author. So Joseph Campbell basically said that follow your bliss and doors will open where you see only walls. And while others may be able to see walls, you will see those doors, and the doors will open. Now this seems like a bit difficult to hold in the real world. Do doors really open when you follow your bliss? Which is, if you live a life that you want to live and live it happily, then are opportunities born? Do you connect with the right kind of people? This is a question that people may have. What Vani and I have seen in our life is that if anything works by way of the law of the universe, it is following your bliss. And we've seen that happen time and again to us. When we looked at our own life and what we've learned from it, we said, why don't we go out there and launch a series to help people connect with people who have followed their bliss and from whom we can learn and share learnings with them. So that's how the idea was seeded, and we are here today. Joseph Campbell actually says that he was inspired by the Sanskrit term Satchitananda. Satchitananda as a concept, as a term, basically breaks down into 3 words: Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat is being, Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is rapture or bliss. So Campbell says that I didn't know what my being was, whether it was a perfect being or an imperfect being. I didn't know if my consciousness was perfect, right or wrong. But I surely knew what my bliss was. And I guess I hung on to my bliss. These are his words. And it has worked out. So, in a way, this series celebrates all those people who have hung on to their bliss. When people cling on to their insecurities, they get into worries and depression and lead a meaningless, boring life. When you cling on to your bliss and follow it, when you move in that direction, it doesn't mean that there will be no upheavals, but there will be a great alignment between who you are, your being, what you're experiencing, your consciousness, and what you believe in, your bliss, your rapture. How does this translate into a practical level? And so, hey, I think I put my phone. Just hit me. I need to use my phone for a minute because I saved a screenshot on it. This morning, while I was scrolling up Instagram, I found my friend's post there, and I thought it's extremely relevant to what we're discussing today, which is follow your bliss. So this is our friend for Vani and me. We call her Niche. Her name is Nisha. We call her Niche, and she's launched a business enterprise called Niche Bakes. So it's a bakery. It's a home bakery that she's launched, and she calls it Niche Bakes. So she's put out her logo as well. today on Instagram. But the post made a lot of sense and connects with a lot of what I'm saying just now about the spirit of following your bliss. And I quote Nish here. Nish says, saying that baking is my passion would be an understatement. I've come to realize that it is more what I am meant to do. It is my calling. It has taken a great many years for me to get to where I am and to even come to this realization. Look at the words. Great many years, realization. A significant number of years of not knowing what I was meant to do, and a few more years of indulging in this calling and hitting a brick wall, a great many hours of research, and a fair number of sleepless nights have all culminated in this very moment and time for the launch of my very own brand, Niche Quakes. I felt this is beautiful, and I shared this with all of you today. So I took a permission, saved a screenshot, and here I am sharing this journey of Nisha with all of you. That's how it translates in the real world. When you follow your bliss, you go through a process of inner awakening, a realization. See, any career is going to take time building. You might as well build a career that you believe in and that makes you happy. And that's the concept behind the Bliss Catchers show as well, where we are in conversation with interesting people, all of those who have shown great courage in going on to what they believe in doing. That's our wall of fame. We have a couple of Bliss Catchers here in the audience as well. There's V. Balakrishnan from season 1 of Theatre Nisha, and Kavitalaya Krishnan from season 1, another Bliss Catcher. So we do have a huge wall of fame running to more than 80 people right now, 80 Bliss Catchers, and joining that blissful community are two wonderful, wonderful people today, Varun Iyer and Shurajit Guha. Thank you. Let me introduce the two of them to you. But before that, let me quickly say why Vani and I do this. That may be a question for some of you in the audience. Why do Vani and I do this month on month? What do we get out of it? You see, Vani and I, for the last decade, have been going through a bankruptcy. And we have lived through long spells of worklessness and pennilessness. But during this entire time, there's something that we refused to compromise on, and which was our own inner happiness, our bliss. We said we are good with a few things, it's just that we are going through a very challenging phase in life when work is not coming our way. So let's not capitulate and go and do things that are not in the zone of our inner joy. And therefore, we became ourselves both proponents and practitioners of the Follow Your Bliss philosophy. And so in 2015, we started the Bliss Catchers. We do 4 other programs. I wrote my book, Fall Like a Rose Petal, and that is the reason why we do this. We wake up every morning to do work which inspires happiness. That, we believe, is our life's purpose. So, in introducing Varun and Shurajit today, I believe we are living up to that purpose of inspiring happiness. Because here are two wonderful people who totally believe in the philosophy of Follow Your Bliss, and they're living by it. Now, I met Shurajit in January this year at a friend's place, a very dear friend of mine, for Vani and me. Vijay Raghavan had invited us for dinner, and we met Shurajit on the terrace. It was a terrace party, and I was drawn to Shurajit because of the introduction that Vijay Raghavan gave of Shurajit. He said, Shurajit is the voice of Hemant Kumar. And let me tell you, here's a little confession. At one time, in order to impress Vani, I really wanted to sing. And the song that I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, but gave up because I'm glad I gave up, because it would have been insulting to both Hemant Kumar and to Shurajit Guha. The song was an amazing song from 20 Saal Baad called Bekarar Karke Hame Yun Na Jayegi. For a long time I practiced the song thinking think I'll sing that and impress Vani that I am a singer. So I was drawn to you, Surajit, because Vijayaravan introduced us saying you have the voice of Hemant Kumar, and I said, hey, wow. But I was drawn to his story because at an age when many people will think of saving up for retirement, of building a second home, doing things which are considered normal in a social parlance, Surajit actually quit his job after 25 years in corporate life in 2011 and decided to take the deep dive into full-time singing. That was a clincher for Vani and me, and we said, hey, that's possibly a bliss catcher. We met him for coffee, and over coffee, we understood that this was something that he had been doing all his life. Started singing at the age of 2.5, started with Jim Reeves, Western classical and Western music, and then moved to singing Hindi music, and today he is the most celebrated concert singer, and people across the world follow him and his music. So Surajit, I'm very, very delighted you're here on this show with us, and I'm here to understand the journey just as everyone here is keen to. Thank you for joining us. Varun, what can I tell you about Varun? Vani and I do another show called The Artist's Soul, which we host at the Wandering Artist, which is another venue in Arepuram. And whenever we went to conduct our conversation, the Artist's Soul conversation, we would find promotions for Varun's yoga classes over there. And I, for the longest time, thought of Varun as a yoga practitioner, which he is, by the way. And then we received an invitation from Wandering Artist to be part of a one-act, one-person play performance called Sargam Kola, correct? And it was a supper theatre evening, and we were invited to have supper and watch this wonderful performance by Varun Iyer. So I told myself, hey, I kind of know this guy. He's a yoga practitioner, but is he also a performer? And so I googled up Varun Iyer, and what do I see? National School of Drama, a consummate theatre performer, a music lover, a music practitioner, a traveling teacher, and also performing Sargam Kola that evening at Wandering Artist. If you have not watched Sargam Kola, I would encourage all of you to watch Sargam Kola when it shows the next time in Chennai. It's a story of a man who tries to get a ticket for a concert and is unable to get a ticket, and he is trying to the concert hall, and it's the story of various people who go to the concert for multiple reasons, from showing off to enjoying the concert, right? And all of this happens in Shuddha Hindi with pieces of Raga Alapana thrown in. Am I right? Is my memory right? And you are transported to being part of the audience, transported to being a character in the performance yourself. And through all of this, I noticed something. I noticed that Varun was not performing. Varun was living. He was living each character. 1 minute he was the chaiwala. 1 minute he was that distraught ticket seeker. 1 minute he was that sahab who arrived in a car to show off. 1 minute he was that gaggle of girls who were laughing and talking about their nail polishes, if I remember, or about the manicure. So he was living. It was an immersive experience for the audience as much as it was for Varun. And we met Varun and discovered that his passion for theatre started with some existential questions. The questions being, why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And what are we meant to do in this lifetime? Those existential questions led him to study physics, led him to study yoga, led him to teach, and led him to perform. And today, we will try and unravel how all of these connect back to give us the Varun Iyer performance that the world sees, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome Joseph Campbell and Varun Iyer. Gentlemen, please join me here. Thank you so much for being here with us. So I hope the introduction was complete. I just talked from my experience of knowing you, both wonderful people. Okay, for all of you who are the first time here at the Bliss Catchers, the way we will go with this conversation is, we will go with each of the stories. I'll keep bouncing back and forth between the two stories, one of Varun and one of Surajit. And as we go along with these stories, I will keep asking them questions, and it will be a little intimate conversation between the three of us for most of today. Somewhere midway, closer to 7:40 by my clock, which I have here in front of me, 7:40 in that range, I will turn around and ask you two questions. One question will be about Varun, and one question will be about Surajit. And if you get the answer right, now how will you know the answer? Because the answer would have already been covered in the conversation. Okay. If you have heard the conversation intently, you should be able to answer. And what do you get for answering the question right? You get this beautiful mug. Okay. And anybody who's drunk from this mug has told me that it's bliss. Okay. So your Sunday morning coffee is coming to you in a Bliss Catcher mug if you get your answers to our questions right. So that's the midway quiz segment. Then we go on with the conversation. At about 8:10, we come up to you for your questions to the guests. And then closing time, closer to closing time, which is around 8:20, 8:25, we will have Surajit and Varun ask you questions of their choice. And again, you get to win 2 mugs. So totally 4 beautiful Bliss Catcher souvenir mugs going out tonight. And we will close the conversation sharp at 8:29 p.m. So you can be sure of this event getting over at 8:29. We are always very good with time, and so it will be today as well. Okay, so that's the format. Gentlemen, are you feeling good? Okay, let's get the mics going and get our conversation started. Okay, I'm going to borrow a few lessons from Varun after the show on how to. I can't grow the kind of hair that you have, okay? But I'll at least try and learn how to get that kind of attire in place. Okay, you're looking very cool. So are you, sir. Okay. Okay. So let's get started. Let me start with you, Varun. Let's go back to our coffee shop conversation where Vani and I explored your journey a little bit. And let me ask you, Varun, you were going through this phase of asking questions in your life. I think all of us go through that phase. But I believe that when you ask, who are we, why are we here, and what are we doing with our life here, when you ask those kind of questions, at a very young age, there must have been a trigger, right? And if I remember right, you were living in Hyderabad at that time, you were a schoolboy in Hyderabad. Why did you end up asking those questions? What was your trigger?
I think the trigger was indirectly. The trigger was the lines, I cannot live without knowing the answers to questions like who am I or why am I here. The further I stay alive, the more I understand that these questions are unanswerable, and therefore I have no reason to live at all. These are lines from Anna Karenina, Tolstoy's Karenina. And directly, I think, because these books arrived to me from my mother's Indian Railways office library that she visit and keep bringing. For some reason, she felt at 11, 10, 11, 12, Tolstoy was in place, Dostoevsky was in place, Kafka was in place, which is remarkable now that I think about it, because I think I was reading through Dostoevsky and Kafka around 11, 12, 13. And whatever that meant, I probably was just reading through, skimming through these things that these people were saying quite loosely, at least 50%. But the rest of the 50 must have stuck around. And I think the questions must have started there.
Okay, okay. Talk a little bit about what was your thought process. Today you're among the many things that you do. To me, as a curator of the show, and the reason why we invited you is that you are an immersive performer. Okay? So that's where you have arrived at the moment. That's where you are. But what were your plans when you were in school, when you were reading all these classics? What did you want to be doing in life? All of us have our childhood dreams, right? And at one point, apart from trying to impress Vani, even before that, I thought I would be an actor. So I never got down to being that. So what were your dreams as a child? What were you looking at?
To be an astrophysicist.
Wow, okay.
Some notion of wanting to be an astronaut, but astrophysicist. Then I realized, I think I felt astronaut is not my thing because I preferred sitting in one place and doing things. So I felt theoretical physics and astrophysics was the way to go. And then for a while I felt maybe not philosophy, not physics but philosophy. And then writing, but largely table-oriented work. Work that can sit on a very dim light and write away or read away.
In a secluded place.
In a secluded place, yes.
And it's quite the anti of everything that you are doing.
I think I still prefer that. I think I still prefer that.
Okay. If you were drawn into the line of inquiry that you were drawn into, you were having this vision of being an astrophysicist, and then later you moved into philosophy. Where did MCC and physics come in as a major? Why did you choose that line, and why did you not choose, philosophy as a field of study at that time? Why did you choose physics as a field of study?
I think because there was strange affinity to try and empiricize things. I felt this need to want to arrive at some general formulae that will define the universe and how things are, and how we function really. And I think that sort of drove me to study physics. Also, I was reading Einstein, and there's this very interestingly wild notion of what Einstein might have been. When you actually look at his life, he wasn't as wild. But the manner in which Einstein is projected, the manner in which the things that we've been fed on about Einstein or about many other theoretical physicists, interestingly, there's this very common thread of wildness that runs through them. And I think there is this feeling that physics formulae, this wanting to go over a certain mathematical framework, trying to place the universe within it, etc., carried with it a certain wildness for me. And of course the dim light and the table. So both together.
So that's how you ended up at MCC. That's interesting. So you have these questions. You are drawn to philosophy. At the same time, there is a romance, there is a kadal, there is a mohabbat with physics. And then you do something very interesting. You go on to teach at KFI after you graduate. What drew you to teach, and why KFI?
I think around that time, when we moved from Bombay to Madras, we moved as a family, and we were looking for places where my sister could go spend time during the day. And over time, we realized the school to which she was going was not working. That was also the time when I was encountering Krishnamurti much more than I had, Krishnamurti's work much more than I had before, which incidentally was also introduced to me by my mother. And out of the blue, I sort of pulled that maybe we should just try the Krishnamurti school. And it was midway between from class 10 to 11 for her, and we said, all right, this is what we should do. And entry into the Krishnamurti school here, the school in Damodar Gardens, I think the entry was very, very magical for me. And it still is. If you walk into the TS, if you walk into that portion of the TS, walk from the gate to the first large tree that lies in the center of that path. I think it's a very mystical walk. It carries with it a certain... You don't often enter education without buildings. You don't enter education without a bunch of teachers standing and saying, this is what you must do. You enter education through these norms. But to enter education with just a plain walk amidst trees for a very long time, and then enter the idea of education without many tall buildings, without air conditioners, with a certain idea that maybe this is spending time during the day and not going mad over some of the things that education does to us. I think that captured me, and I said, this is it. That it's done.
And you were drawn there. You were drawn. Let's quickly capture what we kind of understood from talking to Varun so far. Here's a person, a young man, in his infancy and while growing up, tried multiple things, asked many questions, and to be celebratory of his parents, they allowed him to do all of that. Most often, parents say, "Nalla padi," just focus on your academics. Don't ask too many questions. These are questions that can be unanswered for the longest time. But that spirit of inquiry was nurtured, and he was allowed to explore it in his own way, physics at a time, philosophy at a time, and then allowed to embrace Krishnamurti's notion of a world which is so beautiful while still living in the framework of our caste society, right? I think that's what I'm picking up. That it's perfectly all right to do multiple things, to inquire, to seek, and to keep searching. It's perfectly all right. That's a very beautiful journey, and I'm curious to understand how you progress from there. But I will pause your story for a little while and move to Shurajit to get the story started. Okay. We are very blessed today as an audience because we have Shurajit's father here, Mr. Guha. Thank you for joining us, sir. Thank you. And I'm going to use this opportunity to delve back into our Starbucks conversation, our conversation over a cup of coffee, Shurajit, where I remember you telling me that as a young child, your biggest inspiration was from your dad, who would tell you, if you want to sing, sing. Isn't that fascinating that a parent can tell a child, just do, just be, just go, do what you like. And your dad did that. So talk a little bit about your childhood and how music grew in you and on you.
I think the very first time I was introduced to music at all was by a record of Hemant Kumar in Bengali, which used to be played for me. And when the record would stop, I would start crying. And until they had to play the record again and again, until, according to my dad and mom, the record broke. So, literally, I mean, it got spoiled. And I remember that little gramophone on the floor, and I was about 1 year old. Don't ask me how, but I have these images of myself being propped up on the bed and listening to that. I still have those images. Don't ask me how. They're very strong in me. And I think right from a very, very early age, perhaps it was my grandmother's singing to me, music crept on me. And from what I hear my mother say, I could sing a whole song from the age of 2.5. I was rejected at the music school because they told me that until you're 5 years old, your vocal cords don't develop. And as a favor, they asked me to sing a couple of lines before leaving. And I sang the entire song in the style of the original artist. And they took me. So my journey began from there. It was nurtured by a very favorite aunt of mine who used to buy a lot of records for me. One day, however, we had this lovely radiogram, garage record player and Murphy radiogram. And I emptied a sack of wheat, and while the entire radiogram was burning, I brought in my parents to watch. They didn't know what to do with this terrible child. And they complained to my aunt, who seemed to be the only person who came across to me. And she said, it's very simple. He's very frustrated that he's not able to handle the music system himself. And my parents said, are you kidding? He's 3.5. She taught me how to handle a record player by standing on a stool and actually playing those records, how to take care of the records. And from that day onwards, I was the only person in that family who would play those records every day, every song. It was a ritual for me to play all my records every day. Wow. There were songs which would make me cry, but I still played them, I don't know why, but I still played them. There were songs which lightened my heart, and I would play them. Things went on that way till I joined school. I came to Madras. I would prefer to call it Madras than Chennai. I'm from Madras, not Chennai.
And very appropriate, very appropriate.
We came here way back in 1971, and the very first school nurtured me into music. From my school, my music teacher out there, she felt that I had something special, and she devoted a lot of time. She was very strict. She would hit people with a ruler, except for me. And then I started giving radio programs at the school from the age of 8. And it was initially a yearly ritual, then it became a monthly ritual, and then it almost became a weekly ritual. Really about, when I was about 10 years old, I remember this image of my father holding me in the drawing room, he and my mother asking me this question, rather telling me this. Son, we know that you love music, we know it's in your genes, it's somewhere in your blood. None of us are from a musical background. None of us have been in performance. But we know it's important for you. So, just in case you feel that you need to take a break from what you're doing and get into music mainstream, we are with you. We don't know how, but whatever decision you take, we are with you.
Isn't that beautiful? Give that a phenomenal
for a middle class family to tell their only child. At that point of time, I was the only child. I had a beautiful sister when I was 19 years old. So, at that point in time, for them to give me a green signal to get into music full time was something which I now realize was such a blessing.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's an amazing learning there. I think the joy of parenting lies in going with the joy of the child and not resisting it just because there are social compulsions or financial pressures. You know, there is great joy in parenting when you can go with the joy of the child, and that's really what the Guhas did with Shurjit. That's amazing. Let me ask you, Shurjit, here. You told us, and I saw a Facebook post as well. You had an event earlier this week where you celebrated the memory of Jim Reeves, who you call your first icon, and on whose music you grew. So, two questions here. What drew you to Jim Reeves? I mean, because it's unusual for somebody from an Indian background to take to Western music so early on. And though Jim Reeves' music is beautiful, phenomenal, and I'm not surprised in that sense, but still, even the way we appreciate his music, and how you moved from Western music to Hindi music. Is there a story there as well? Because today you are celebrated as the voice that's closest in resemblance to Hemant Kumar's. So from Jim Reeves to Hemant Kumar, how did that shift happen early on in your life?
I think it was those early records which my aunt bought for me, some of them being Jim Reeves. I would keep playing every day. I used to play all my records every day. But there was something about Jim Reeves which possibly around the age of 10 began to draw me closer. And that was, he made everything sound so personal to you. And it was as if he was voicing your innermost thoughts. And while they were being exposed, you were unashamed, not embarrassed. It was here was somebody who was saying it for you. That personal bond grew. And I feel that, even in my loneliest moments, and I was an only child for a long, long time, as I just mentioned, it was a huge solace for me. And being a singer, I got drawn into his music. I started singing. I think out of the 64 radio programs I've given, 61 of them featured songs of Jim Reeves.
Oh, okay.
That was my way of paying tribute to my idol. And even my first television performance at the age of 15 in What World, the 10 minutes live performance, out of 10 minutes, 7 minutes were dedicated to Jim Reeves. Curiously, thereafter, we were on a school trip, and we were performing in Calcutta, my hometown. And my teacher said, "Look, Suraj, I've never heard a Bengali song. Can you sing one for me?" And I sang a song which had recently been released by Hemant Kumar from the film Siddharth. It was called Uno Dili, and he hadn't heard about it. I sang the song to him because I had heard Hemant Kumar live about a year ago, and I fell in love with his voice. In fact, it was because of my father we got introduced to Hemant Kumar in University Centenary Auditorium in 1976.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was the most amazing performance I've ever witnessed in my life. The next day I was in front of the harmonium with a dhoti. I didn't know how to tie the dhoti, but I did the best job I could. And that was my beginning of loving Hemant Kumar. Never realizing it would go deeper than that. Till that fateful day, my teacher made me sing that song. The moment I sang it, he had one comment. He did not know who to sing a word. He said, "Suraj, you've got a voice exactly like Hemant Kumar." Then I sang another song which I had learned by then, Tere Dwar Khada Ek Jogi.
Oh, beautiful.
And he said, "This is what I meant." Curiously, I started learning some songs of Hemant Kumar and Kishore Kumar simultaneously. Whenever I would perform for school or for college, I would sing all kinds of songs, including Mohammed Rafi's. But the moment I would sing a single song of Hemant, the whole audience would come to a standstill, and that is when everything else would melt away, fade away, and people would say, "We want more of Hemant Kumar." The request just came coming, and I didn't realize that.
That's how the reputation got built.
That's how it got built, and I'm stuck with it. And I love this gentleman who's the second half of my musical life. And I think at a college level, I was moving away from an era of dated Western music, when I was not finding feet in Western music anymore. But in Indian music, I found a new avenue, and I started enriching my journey into the Indian music field from then onwards. After that, I think the rest is history.
Your story and your articulation is so powerful, and I have very important questions on why you chose to forsake a lot of it for 25 years, okay? Or pause many parts of it for 25 years, but I will take that question for you in the next segment, okay? This brings us to the midway segment. It's 7:40, and I will now ask you questions on my audience. But before I ask you the questions, I want to tell you why they are my guests today, okay? This is a Madras Week special edition, okay? What is the curious connection that both these gentlemen have with the city of Madras and Chennai? Any guesses?
They studied in Madras?
Partly correct. Partly
Must be
correct.
writers.
No. No.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What do you think could be the connection with Madras?
Madras
Chennai.
University and Madras Christian College.
Huh?
Madras University and Madras Christian College.
Okay. In a way, you are answering it right. Both of them were not born in this city, right? But they loved the city. They made it their home.
This
And
city brought out their innermost being and their soul.
Ah, beautiful. That's Ati, one of our regular guests in the audience. Thank you, Ati. So they love the city. They call it home, and though they were not born here, that's their Madras connection. He's also from MCC, yes. Okay, here we are with the quiz questions that are going to win you the mugs now. Okay, so I'll request Mr. Guha not to answer the question. Okay, anybody else in the audience can answer this question. Connect Shurajit with a gentleman who was also called Choto Pankaj. Connect Shurajit with a gentleman who was also called Choto Pankaj, obviously the reference being to Pankaj Malik. Yes, Padmini, you are absolutely right. It is Hemant Kumar. Hemant Kumar's nickname was Pankaj Jr. or Choto Pankaj. Okay, and that is the connection. So please come forward. And Padmini is going to have a fantastic coffee tomorrow morning. Congratulations. Padmini is a very well-known author, and she is here with us today. Thank you so much, Padmini. Okay, let's go on with the question on Varun. Okay, this one is a sitter. People should be able to crack it on the buzzer, people. Okay, connect Varun Iyer with Indra Nui. MCC, yes, sir. Please come forward. I heard it first there. Okay. Both of them are alumni of Madras Christian College. Yes. Thank you. What's your name, sir?
My name is Ramesh.
Ramesh. Thank you. Thank you, Ramesh. Okay. So on that note, 2 people got the mugs. You can get 2 more mugs later on in the evening. Let's continue our journey. Let me go to Varun. We were talking about Krishnamurti Foundation and your experience of the magical mysticism of the campus drawing you into its fold. Between MCC, KFI, also you did a lot of theatre, right? How were you drawn into theatre, and how did it help your spirit of inquiry? What was relevant for you with your experience in theatre and your spirit of inquiry of what you wanted to do with your life?
For me, I think the beginnings of contact with what we've made a habit to call theatre is, I think, very, very young. I don't even remember when. I think we were used to. It's because we were used to at home attend plays, watch productions, go for concerts, enter and exit auditoria. Basically, this constant moving in and moving out of auditoria for various things. I think my contact with what we know of as theatre today was there. But I think the major sort of turning point, something that I could smell really well, was in Bombay when I saw this production of this presentation of Jane Eyre by a group from UK. What is important is not that they were from UK or that they did Jane Eyre, but the manner in which this play was presented, this beautiful manner in which the bodies that were on stage flowed on stage. And in some ways, if one had read Jane Eyre at that time, what you saw was nothing like what you had read. And so for me, it was a great opening, a sort of revelation that the imagination that you build as you read, which is a very personal imagination, it takes you on one kind of journey, you're sort of dwelling in that journey. But what can happen when you take something that, a word that is, words that are in a book, or ideas that are in our minds, onto a stage-like space, or onto a space where you are performing with people? You can completely switch that imagination to something else, let it flow into something completely, remarkably different. And that did something to me. I don't know what it did to me. I think what it did to me it sort of remains to be seen. But this urge to enter theatre, to go up on stage and do something, or enter what we call a performing space, started there. And then I was sort of in Bombay with the school that I was in, the college that I was in. I was writing. I was writing scripts. I was writing poetry. I was trying to make them into performances. What I today call performances, but at that time called theatre. In the junior college in Bombay. And then when I came to Madras, when we went to MCC, I was reading the diaries of Anne Frank again. And I had this idea that I would convert the book into a script. And interestingly, a book ye thick became a 6.5, 7 hour script, which was madness because one couldn't perform it. And I was trying with a group of people at college to try and see if it can become a performance, if we can go that far, if we can actually perform for 6-7 hours. Most of it, now that I think about it, was really nonsensical. It was diaries of Anne Frank ballooned into ideas of what madness is, method in madness, some idea about Shakespeare, something that Anne Frank could have read, Kafka was inside, Dostoevsky was inside. It was a 6.5 hour long rant about how the universe is, how life is, etc., through the voices of, largely, after every scene of Anne Frank's life, there would be a long, much longer scene with these madmen or madman ranting away about life. Getting that together somehow sort of made me work much more deeply with what we call theatre. And getting that performance together meant money, meant going and asking the people in charge at MCC for money, and there was a funding body. It was a Chandan Devanesan fund, the gentleman in Madras who was doing a lot of work with theatre. He was from MCC. His son, Mitra Devanesan, worked in Madras a lot. And that fund had money that hadn't been touched for nearly a decade. And they said, all right, you can use this money. And just when I had taken that money from the college to make this production happen and also bring it out into the city, we staged it at Shivgami Katachi. There was a fight in the college for the same money, the same amount, by another group that had suddenly decided after more than a decade that they would also take this money. They would also need this money to make another production. And so the fight sort of grew and ballooned. Part of the money was cut off, and we had to cut corners in with what we had thought of, the things that we had thought of for the production. And that was the second, I think, if I may attempt to lay hands on it, the second sort of turning point that not performances. And a gentleman called Ashwathama JD, we had invited two people to come and look at the drama with Anne Frank's diaries. Bala is here. Bala was the other person who came and helped us sort of look at it and see if this works, what we can do with it, etc. Bala was very kind. The other gentleman, Ashwathama JD, he said, "Kya karo yaar?" And the rest of the that go along with it. And he said, "Ye sara sab kuch kaam nahi karega. Sab kuch chhod do." And this was 4 months of work, 5 months of work. And he said, "Tum director banna chahte ho? Kya directorship hai? Kuch nahi jante." And I said, "All right, we have 2 days to show change about everything." And I said, "All right, what you say sounds." I said, "एक पैसे के बगैर रोशनी लाइट फोकस कर सकते हो and production बना सकते हो एक पैसे के बगैर and एक रात में production बन सकता है." And I think we managed to make it sort of possible. I think it was a big production, but the fact that it was mounted in a day and a half, in 2 days, was very interesting for me, and that was a turning point.
And he was from National School of Drama.
He happens to be from National School of Drama, so is Bala. But I don't know if I made the connection with the National School of Drama then. I had continued working with even after I finished physics at MCC, and I was working as a full-time teacher, largely with the Krishnamurti Foundation. I was working a lot with Theatre Nisha, a lot of the work with Theatre Nisha, a few other groups outside of Madras, and there was a lot of teaching of theatre, a lot of dealing with the idea of what theatre is, and various notions about who really the actor is, who is the director, why the director, why the actor, why playing, what is all theatre about, about scripts, is theatre, why is theatre all theatre, etc. Why not something else? But also I felt that for nearly about 10 years by then, my work in what we would call acting was starting to need a break. It was starting to stagnate. It needed some fresh air. And I felt I was working continuously. Also teaching, also working after teaching time, before teaching time. Somewhere, a lot of the ideas that were sort of going on, the thoughts that were going on in the mind of the questions. And I needed time to go over them in my mind and put some of those threads together at least try.
NSD gave you that platform.
NSD, I think it happened by chance. I was applying to a lot of places to take time off to study philosophy, to really actually not go to class but sit at the library and figure things out myself, to try to put things in my head. And NSD happened to sort of say okay before the other places. A couple of other places said okay, that's how NSD happened.
Very important point there. You're running. You're doing multiple things to the point that you don't know what you're doing, and you need to pause and reflect. That's the important story there. In his journey, it is the NSD, his application to multiple places. But what are we doing with our lives? Are we just running this existential rat race, not knowing where we are starting the day and where we are ending it? If you're doing that, all you need to do is sit back, pause and reflect. And a great place to pause and reflect is to go do what you love doing. And there, age is no bar. Age is no bar to do that. Okay, that's what I'm feeling. Let me pause your story again and go to Shruti. Shruti, I'm curious to ask you, understand, with that kind of passion with which your musical introduction happened, your interface with music happened, why did you take up a corporate career and actually go through it for 25 years? And during this phase, was music ever part of it? Were you having music come back to you in multiple ways, or was it a complete disconnect?
So in other words, you were asking me whether, as to why I took up music as a career almost at the time when I became a senior citizen.
Well, yes, I'm going to come to that question later in terms of what prompted that decision, but I want to understand those 25 years, how did you and music connect?
What I didn't tell you at the beginning of the story was that apart from music, I also had a passion, which was flying. I wanted to become a pilot. Wow. So not very different, Okay. So I wanted to become a pilot, and it was a dream from the age of 2.5. So people used to tease me about it and ask me as to, what do you really want to do? Do you want to fly or do you want to sing? I told them I know what I don't want to do. I don't want to become an engineer. I don't want to become a doctor. I don't want a 9-to-5 job. I was very clear. When everybody else was getting an MBA or going for higher studies, and everybody else was choosing real and wonderful subjects in school, I was stuck with mathematics, something which I unfortunately did not like at all. But there was no other option, so I thankfully got into English literature in college. But I didn't have very many openings in music, because although I had very generous parents pointing me towards music, saying that, son, we'll give you that opportunity. We met up with some people who gave suggestions. I wanted to become an opera singer. Then my aunt, who was already an opera singer, she suggested I learned Hindustani classical. I did, but that really wasn't my calling. I felt I loved music, but that wasn't the route I was going to take. And I didn't have any of the programs, the reality shows which you have today, where you have a platform ready. There was already a Hemant Kumar, an aging Hemant Kumar, a pretty well-to-do Kishore Kumar who was still alive and kicking, and right till 1987. So what was the chance for me to get into Bollywood? So I did what everybody else would do, and that is where my bliss took a pause. I did the next best thing which I could do. Not get into a 9-to-5 job. I got into sales and marketing.
Interesting.
And that gave me confidence. I was very shy, except on stage. Except on stage, I was very shy to make conversation with people. I was the only child, so I didn't know really how to make small talk. And really, center stage was where I felt at home. But life doesn't always appear to be a stage. So I had to make it a stage for myself. Well, sales gave me that confidence and courage to talk to people. And by some work of fate, I got into a new job, which was banking, which I really didn't like at all. Because that was, again, those 9-to-5, and, ledgers, and I was dying to get out. I got to this wonderful company called NIS Sparta, which gave me that breath of fresh air into the field of training. They said, we can do with your sales experience. Can you train? I said, I don't know. I've never taken a presentation in my life. I always muffed. They said, let's try you out. They did, they liked me, and I went through some rigorous training, and I became a trainer. And I discovered my second stage, my second platform, where I could perform. I had an audience. It was interactive. It was wonderful. It was music, it was theater, it was interacting with students. It was amazing. And so why should I leave that? So when I didn't have an opportunity to get into music full time because I was through with college, I didn't have the backing of a music team. I didn't have openings coming up. So I got into corporate life. I got into training. And for years, it looked as if that would be my end all and be all. There was a time, of course, every now and then there would be some break, some organization, some association would ask me to perform, but those opportunities were few and far between. One thing I have realized about anybody's calling, if you don't go after it, if that is really you, that will come after you.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's amazing.
It shouldn't have to be that way. But sometimes you need a kick in the pants. And I got mine.
I'll come to that. I need to pick up two very interesting learnings. It's enclosed. You have a couple of choices. One is to figure out a way in which you can still be happy doing what you like doing, and which is the part where he talks about having an audience, being in training, doing the job on stage, right? He said the stage was, being sent to stage was my home as a singer, and then he found an alternative stage in training, right? So that is the kind of maneuvering you have to do sometimes in life. And the second learning I have here is that he chose not to be grumpy about it, not to be depressed about it. People tend to become very complaining about life, that this is the way my life is, I'm doomed to live this reclusive life, I wanted to do multiple things, but it's not happening for me, and blah, and blah, and blah. But you chose not to do that, because you even say, for the longest time I thought that was going to be my be-all and end-all. So you had come to a stage of great acceptance, but a happy acceptance, right? And you're enjoying the process. Now tell us how your bliss found you again, and that eventful time in 2011 when you actually took that call, which was about 7 years ago. So I assume you're 50, 55, 56 now, so you must have been closing in on 50. Okay, I don't want to talk numbers here, but you were fairly advanced in life to take that deep dive. What prompted you, and what's that incident? Tell us about it.
So I think training would have pursued till a ripe old age, had things not taken another turn. And that's when I feel that when your real calling is missed out somewhere, your soul finds its path somewhere. It finds an opportunity not even known to you. Because I enjoyed every bit of training. I loved that. So why would I move away from that? Because at one stage I found myself getting bogged down with administrative work in training, which I didn't enjoy. And here is a dear friend of mine who's sitting right over here, ex-colleague of mine, and a very dear friend. He was part of my team. And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's a time when, with seniority, you get into administration. And I am not the regular 9-to-5 guy. I like to be on stage. And that was removed from me. And all of a sudden I became a spectator. That was not okay. So I spent a few years grumpily. Until one time, and I had a spiritual guru in pranic healing. And she used to say this originally, if I had even half your talent in singing, I would chuck this and just follow this. I was given a few very important breaks in the early 90s by this magnificent lady called Mrs. Banerjee, who was my mother's friend and who started this platform in Hindi music, thematic Hindi film music for Chennai, all across. And I was associated with Rooplin from its inception, and that gave me the first platform in a professional mode of performing, not anymore as a hobby, but as a profession. There was another very dear friend of mine, another singer, who told me that, Surajit, the day you want respect in music, you're going to start charging, you're going to become a professional. Till that time, people will not take you seriously. I said, you must be joking. Music should be free. Music should be for everyone. He said, yes. But when you've taken the decision to do that, run out of Madras and allow me to at least earn my money. Because you're spoiling my market. That was the first kick in the pants for me to understand what made things work in the real world if you wanted to follow your passion. To have your head in the air, but your feet on the ground as well. That is something which I learned. And then, because of this platform, there were people from Bombay who came over, who heard me perform, who started calling me. And I started getting performances in Bombay, in Gujarat. I asked my organization, is that all right if I perform in parallel? Because my heart is in music. If you're going to deny me this, I will walk out today. I've had this very serious chat with my boss in the first few years of my being with my job, which was at ING Life Insurance. And they were magnanimous enough to say, yes, as long as it doesn't interfere with your work, you can go right ahead. And so that happened for years, and had a very happy combination of musical evenings and weekends in Bombay and work in Bangalore. But then, I think when your calling calls, that's when you get your second kick in the pants. And that's when I suddenly ended up getting an administrative job. There was only two ways of dealing with the frustration. Become grumpier still, or to do something about it. I remember that one night when a friend of mine, colleague of mine, said, Surajit, today is my last day. I said, that is not fair. We were supposed to leave together. Maybe. And that was my second and very important kick in the pants. I said, I've been mulling over, switching over, what's holding me back? And I realized, A, it was complacency, and B, inwardly I was scared. I was scared of whether I would be doing the right thing, of switching over to something where I wouldn't have a regular income. Even if I didn't enjoy my current being, I was at least getting a steady income. That would throw me into the wolves. I realized one more aspect which I was told. There's nothing called a steady job. Not anymore. There is nothing called steady. There is nothing guaranteed in life. So if nothing is guaranteed, I'd much rather be doing something which I love than get stuck in a corporate. That one night I took the decision. I called up my spiritual guru and said, I'm thinking of moving on. She said, if you didn't do that, I would have kicked you. The next day I wrote this very emotional letter to my office saying that I've had wonderful dealings with all of you, and I'm now about to take a very important step to the next stage of my journey with life. My new boss, who had just walked in, announced to 400 traders in my absence that Surajit Guha is about to leave ING and I'm going to stop him. My successor asked him, have you heard him sing? He said, no, I haven't. Hear him, and then you will accept his resignation right away.
And that's how it happened.
That's what happened. So I believe there are times when you don't have openings, which are visible to you, but if you are meant for it, it will show up at your doorstep, and you'll be compelled, and you'll be a fool not to see it when it's standing in front of you.
This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is Follow Your Bliss. This is doors opening. This is doors opening when you see, when the world will see only walls and you will see the doors. Fantastic, thank you. I'm not going to add my perspective to it, only because you've said it so well and so emotionally, so beautifully. Thank you so much, Shurajit. I just have one point to add here, which is more on the operational dynamics of today's conversation. We are at a time where I'm not going to allow audience questions. We can interact with them offline. I am keen to complete the conversation. It's a fairly intense conversation that we are having. So please bear with me. We will go straight into the quiz segment in a little time. Let me go to Varun to complete your story. Okay, just two quick questions, and possibly the first one first, obviously, which is having been 3 years in a master's program at National School of Drama, coming to terms with the kind of performances you're choosing to do today, and enjoying the process, because that's what I saw, Vani saw, the audience saw with Sargam Kola. What are you believing is your definition of your bliss today? Okay, and I ask this question particularly because physics, yoga, music, theater, teaching, traveling, all of that have been part of your journey. Do all these dots connect in the way you express yourself as a performer? And is there a way that you can define it today? Or is a definition even important?
The question of whether a definition is important is it's a question that will need much more time for us to speak about, but I'll try and see if I can speak about what it means for me, what performance means for me today, and how these dots connect. I think it's what I realize is that it is impossible for an actor. Let's take the example of this notion of what acting is, or who an actor is. I think it's impossible for an actor to be herself or himself to do only what we call acting. I think in order to act, in order to engage with the act of performing, to sort of work really before an audience and with an audience, I think it's important for this person to study his or her living. And the act of living may be that I'm doing carpentry for 1 hour of the day, I'm doing pottery for the next hour of the day, I'm cooking for 5 hours, I'm sleeping for 10 hours, etc., etc., etc. But each of these aspects, to me, are performative in nature. They carry the seed of what we can call performing, the performative, or the performance itself. For me, it ties up there because a lot of the ideas that yoga speaks of, yoga as a philosophy, as a darshana speaks of, has deep meaning for performance. A lot of the things that education could be, philosophy speaks about all over the world. Various things that we can pick specifically have deep meaning for performance. And if one goes into it, one realizes that it is not what we think of as performing normally. It's the idea that is associated, the ideas that are the notions associated with performing usually are that it is about fame, it is about being known, it is about this often almost disgusting for me word, glamour. It is it has notions of gender that are very problematic. It has ideas of politics that are very, very problematic. The way we think of performance today. And have been thinking of performance. But I think the manner in which yoga, for example, or truly the act of educating and being educated and education itself, can think of education, have very deep implications on gender in performance, on politics of performance, on the fact that a performer really is not a machine that applies makeup, that wears interesting garments, that speaks lines, vomits lines really, or that inhabits a space that is for somebody. I think it changes when you realize that the costumetry, the costumery, the presence itself, what I would like to call presence of the performer, is nothing to do with the outward, or very less to do with the outward, but that it's really a journey with the inward. It's almost, I would say, a meditative process.
This is amazing. I'm sorry to come in here, but I was just coming in because I don't want to lose my train of thought. You used two important words. One at the end, which is the meditative process, but earlier on, talk about performance is the living. Whether you're cooking, whether you're gardening, whether you're writing, everything is a performative activity. Osho says this almost, close to what Osho says, that creativity is not in the activity. Creativity is in the love that you have for what you're creating. So you could be cooking, you could be gardening, you could be a housekeeper, you could be anybody doing anything. How meditative are you? Osho's most beautiful definition is when the performance and the performer become one. When they are lost in that unison, that is when the magic happens, he says. And that's what I'm picking up. And you feel all these thoughts about, and your exploration culminates here. And I want to second what he's saying, because I have seen you before. And I've learned a lot from that myself about the whole act of being in an act. And the word here is neither the act or the act. The word is the being. Just being, the presence that you bring to whatever you're doing. And I think right now when we are speaking, if you're engaging with us, you are being in the moment with us. And that's what he's talking about. That's what he's referring to. I have two very quick questions to both of you. So keep your answers very sharp and within time, because we will run out of time otherwise. Which is, both of you have had such fascinating journeys. Two very, very interesting paths that you have taken. One is extremely explorative, trying many things and then finding a path which you still feel is unfolding for you. That's Varun. And for Surajit, it was a path which was clearly there in front of him, and it found him when he needed it the most, right? So he might have in the popular context gone out of the zone, but it found him, and that's the beauty of it. So questions to both of you are the same, so you can answer in succession, which is following your bliss, okay, and living in the real world, which is steeped in real world issues like paying your bills, running a household, dealing with insecurities and worries. How do you balance this at an individual level? Surajit, what is there a way you do it? How do you stay above the world that we live in?
I really wish I'd take my maths and accountancy more seriously. Having said that, this was always going to be a question for me of whether I would be able to make two. Somehow I feel that life has a way of giving you that answer, giving you that solution when you need it, if you're working sincerely towards your goal, if you really follow your bliss, if you really follow what you are meant to do, and you have a plan, that's important. It's not simply you indulge in something and leave it halfway. But if you follow it right through, and if you're serious about it, I have seen opportunities opening up. So if there are no shows for a couple of months, I might have about 7 or 8 performances the following month. It follows. But you must have that belief in yourself, and you must have the love for it. If you don't have the love for it, I don't think you'll find the belief for it. But once you have the love for it, you better believe it. Because if you don't, you're missing that opportunity again.
Opportunity to live. Yes, sir, your answer.
I don't think there is any balance. I think there is no balance. Often one finds oneself bankrupt, very interestingly bankrupt, and I think it is good. I think it helps because out of sometimes it has happened that one does not pay bills and finds an interesting way of engaging with the bill itself. And I think it becomes important at some point to see if you feel better worrying more about the resources, the money, where the next meal will come from. I think we prefer not to worry about it so much. But in the act of worrying about it, there's something very beautiful. And for me, that has helped. Something or the other, some interesting thing or the other comes, interesting dimension for work comes from not having resources, not having money, not being able to pay your bills immediately, etc. But if one doesn't stop worrying about it, you must. You really must. I think it doesn't often help you do what you're doing, and your work suffers. I'm very bad with accountancy and commerce. So,
I think both answers are very powerful. Both Vani and I can relate to them very well. I just want to say this. Rumi says this very beautifully. He says, "Stop weaving." Rumi, stop weaving and see the pattern improve. In a real world, stop worrying. The life will take care. That is what we have seen. And I think we give too much importance to the person called you. You know, I must solve this problem. It's me. And I think we bring that into play. So I see both answers, the diligence with which you must follow your bliss, the rigor with which you must follow in what Surajit had to say, and unless you stop weaving, you won't see the pattern. Because you are there in the process of worrying, you are thinking you have created the problem, you have to solve it. Neither did you create the problem, nor do you have the solution. So let it flow and go with the flow. We have lived like that for 10 years, and it's been a very, very interesting journey for us. So we do understand the value of what they just spoke. We have very little time, so this has to be a very quick, rapid-fire segment because I do a wrap in exactly 3.5 minutes. So we're going into the quiz segment. Please stay on for another 3.5 minutes. Pick up your mugs, and let's close the evening. So your quick question, your quiz question for the audience.
This person's birthday was the day before,
MGR.
Thursday, but he's a man who is not from India, was very influenced by India, by the concept of rasas, and put forward this concept called the rasa box theory, or the rasa theory.
Anyone with the answer?
His birthday was on August 23rd.
August 23rd.
Okay, you have the answer?
Richard Schechner?
Okay? No? Okay. Do you have a backup question or should I ask a question? Okay, go ahead.
The man who put together his version of the Mahabharata as a live performance but was recorded and DVDs are available around us.
Did we get the answer?
Yes.
Yeah, please come forward, please come forward. Can you give the answer again?
Peter Brook.
Peter Brook.
He also visited India.
Okay.
Very difficult question.
Okay, difficult question, but well answered. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sure. Your question.
This is also philosophy. है अपना दिल तो आवारा न जाने किस पे आएगा. This song. Can anyone say who played the harmonica for this beautiful song?
I know.
Zulwa Sahab.
Party Burman.
SD Burman.
R.D. Burman.
R.D. Burman.
R.D. Burman.
The song was composed by S.D. Burman and his very, very talented son R.D. Burman was the harmonica player for the song.
Dr. Chari, all yours. One more month for your beautiful question.
How about singing one song?
After the show, after the show, if he has the time and willingness. Okay, I need to finish it on time. Please bear with me for a couple of minutes. Fantastic question there, Shurajit. My favorite R.D. Burman as always, and Hemanta. Okay, thank you. You know, I was listening to them intently, soaking in the conversation, and I was wondering how am I going to end it. And here I have two performers. Both of them understand Hindi, and I hope some of you in the audience too. So I thought I'll bring in Gulzar and R.D. Burman and Kishore Kumar and a beautiful song.
Can I have a quiz question?
We'll run out of time. We'll run out of time.
Mugs.
And mugs, yeah. And I want to do, I wanted to bring in that element of music to this closure. So I wanted to end it with the thought that I picked up while listening to both of you. Okay, but I'm just remembering that we haven't given you your Bliss Catcher trophies. That would be blasphemous if I ended without that. Just to finish it on time. So here we are with the coveted Bliss Catcher trophy for both of you. Ashwin is here. Ashwin, please come. Thank you so much. I didn't know you were here. Sorry. This is the man that makes the Bliss Catchers happen every month. Ashwin Okodisi. He's a Bliss Catcher himself who refuses to come on the Bliss Catcher show. Thank you. That's your mug and that's your trophy. So thank you so much. So I was thinking of Gulzar and I was thinking of Kishore Kumar's iconic song, R.D. Burman's music. Golmaal is the film, Rishikesh Mukherjee is the director, and the second antra of that song appealed to me. Okay, and the second antra is that it goes that a moment fell in time. Okay, and when you turn back and look, the moment is gone, and you are left with a story. So आने वाला पल जाने वाला है. हो सके तो इसमें जिंदगी बिता दो. पल ये जो जाने वाला है. So there is this moment, and there is only this moment. In this moment, live your life fully. Live your life celebrating it, living it with complete joy. And I think that's what both of them do. Both of them live it in complete joy with, if I can use this word, a sense of very calculated abandon. Right? The calculation is not about the economic side of things. The calculation is not about the economic side of things. The calculation is about the limited period offered for life. Okay? And that is why I thought of Gulzar and I thought of आने वाला पल जाने वाला है. Okay? हो सके तो इसमें जिंदगी बिता लो. नहीं पल ये जो जाने वाला है. So that is what epitomizes your journeys, and I thought I will end with that. Thank you so much for joining us. So much. It's been a fantastic conversation. I always feel at the end of a Bliss Catcher edition that 90 minutes is not enough, but that's the format we have. Thank you so much everybody for joining us. Please join us on September 29th. We have Vibha Batra, the writer, and who's published 16 books, and we have Surya Ramachandran, a young naturalist guide who went on to do engineering but decided that his love lay in Ladakh, and that's where he is right now, with snow leopards in Ladakh. Okay, that is Saturday, 29th September, 7 p.m. If it's a Saturday and it's 7 p.m., it's all happening at Odyssey. Thank you so much.